Please.
Hello everyone, thank you for having me, and I'm very grateful for this invitation. I have to be honest, I'm very impressed by the program of your Europe from Outside seminars, and lucky you, I have to say you, for having Professor Benito, who is dealing with all issues and giving you the opportunity to meet so many different people from all over the world and to give you these different perspectives. I've been told that you're quite an international auditorium, and I wonder, is there anyone from the Republic of Moldova who can help? Okay, hello, how are you doing? Yeah, so you will monitor the information I will present, and let's keep, I think, at least half an hour for a Q&A session, and I really hope that this part of our discussion will be an honest and frank dialogue. At least I will try to do my best to keep the time. So yeah, we were considering with Professor Benito about the topic to sound, quite a sexy topic, let's put it this way. Yeah. So, Moldova and the European Union integration, is it an irreversible integration or a reversible romance? So let's see. In fact, the relationship of the Republic of Moldova with the European Union lasts for quite several decades, as you may see from this information. So in the late 1994, Moldova has signed a partnership and cooperation agreement with the EU, establishing a framework for political dialogue and economic cooperation. And in 2005, Moldova has signed its first 3 years action plan with the European Union. In 2014, Moldova has received free travel for Moldovan citizens to the EU, and as you may know, in 2022, Moldova, together with Ukraine, has received EU candidate status. Recently in September this year, in fact, Moldova has already completed its screening process with all more than 30 clusters. And also recently, a year ago, a referendum on the EU, on the adjustment of the constitution took place in the Republic of Moldova. So, a month ago, ordinary parliamentary elections took place in the Republic of Moldova. Here you can see the final results, which means that a pro-European party supported by the President Maia Sandu, Party for Action and Solidarity, gained for the second time the majority. They have won 55 seats in the parliament out of 101. So it's less seats in the parliament in comparison with the previous result in 2021. That when they received 63 seats, now they have a little bit less, but still they are governing the country, and several days ago they voted for the new pro-European government. And also a year ago we had an ordinary presidential elections. Here you may see the results from all over the country, including the vote in diaspora. According to the results, the President Maia Sandu has won her second term with 55% of trust from Moldovan citizens. And as I mentioned before, the same day, with the first round of presidential elections, a referendum on the EU integration took place in the Republic of Moldova. The main question was, do you support the adjustment of the Moldovan constitution? According to the final result, Moldovan constitution is amended. You can see the text of the updated constitution. So since last year, Moldovan constitution reaffirms the European identity of the people of the Republic of Moldova and attention the irreversibility of the Moldovan's European course. So here we can put a full stop and say, okay, we now know the answer to the main question. According to Moldovan constitution, the European course of the Republic of Moldova is irreversible. What should we discuss further? But let's see if all these points, the fact that Moldova has the pro-European president, pro-European government, the pro-European majority in the parliament, and constitution amendment, does all these factors really mean or imply the irreversibility of the EU course for this small country? And here I may imply the Georgian example, and I'm not sure if anyone is here from Georgia. Yeah, hello. So yeah, please also let me know if you would agree with my statement during the Q&A session. But I think it's very important also from this perspective to follow the Georgian example, because in 2017, on the initiative of the ruling party Georgian Dream, the parliament amended the constitution. It was the decision taken not by referendum but by the Georgian parliament. And since then, currently, the Georgian constitution stipulates that all the state bodies must take all measures to ensure Georgia's full integration into the EU, but also to NATO. However, this current constitutional provision did not prevent the same political party, Georgian Dream, from adopting the Foreign Agents Law last year, despite criticism of the European Union. And by the way, if you haven't already had the chance to read yesterday's statement of the EU Commission they presented yesterday the progress report on all the candidates states, including Georgia. And you may see that EU is mentioning about the obvious democratic backsliding in Georgia. So we have a situation, right? There is Georgia for more than 4 or 5 years as this EU integration and NATO integration force enshrined in the constitution, but it doesn't mean that they follow this course. The same, we may suggest that the simple fact that Moldova hasn't enshrined it also in the constitution does not guarantee its irreversibility. What about the results of this constitutional referendum which took place a year ago? And here you may check, in fact, what is the difference between yes and no. And you may have the feeling that, in fact, the Republic of Moldova may seem to be divided, right, 50 to 50. So again, here I have to underline that these are the total results of the referendum, which includes the votes from inside the country and outside the country, Moldovan diaspora, right? Because you may have heard that Moldova, being a small country, around 3.5 million of people, but still around 1 million of people, they are living and working. They've chosen to live and work abroad because of the difficult social economic situation and the lack of enough working places inside the country. And here I would love to present you the results of the referendum inside the country, which you may see it's like a strange feeling, don't you see? That when we take the results of the referendum
about the EU force of the Republic of Moldova only inside the country, people who are currently living and working in Moldova, you see that the majority, with 54%, have voted no. And it's a great question to ask why, and a great chance to have a frank and honest debate about the causes of what is really happening in the Republic of Moldova. Because in fact, and it is my impression, please correct me if I'm wrong, but not so many international media outlets stressed this problem, right? So the majority of international media, they presented this as a great success, which it is. Like, as a result, when we say that the result matters, yes, the majority, right? The majority, yes, 50% or 35%, yes, it's a majority. It's as a result. Yes, the constitution has been amended. But what stands behind the scene? And behind the scene, this is the votes cast in Moldova only. So this is the map prepared by a famous sociologist in Moldova, Alexandru Mokuhin. You can see the map of the Republic of Moldova, and you may see with yellow all those few regions inside the country who has clearly voted yes in this referendum. So it's like Chisinau, the capital of the country, and another 6 regions or municipalities. It was a real shock for everyone in the Republic of Moldova. Nobody would have expected this to happen inside the country. Or, for example, nobody would have expected, I mean, yeah, some may say, okay, it's clear with the results in the Transnistrian region or in Gagauzia, which some may recall as pro-Russian regions. But what has happened, for example, with such big municipalities as Bonn and Kabul, which are considered to be pro-European regions, and European Union has spent a lot of money, a lot of grants for infrastructure, the support for the civil society, for the local municipality for last 20 years. What has happened there? And in fact, this amount of votes, 13,000 of people, they changed the outcome of the referendum. Do you imagine? So this is the difference between yes and no when we analyze the results of the referendum inside and outside the country. And within the country, only 45% voted in favor, and the overwhelming majority of Moldovan regions voted against Euro integration in the constitution, even if in some areas the margin was quite slim. As I mentioned you a little bit earlier, so this referendum took place a year ago in the same day with the first round of the presidential elections. As I have already mentioned, Maia Sandu had won these elections, yes, and I showed you the final results of the second. So here are the final results. I showed you the final results of the second round, including diaspora, and here are the results in Moldova only. Again. Right? So for you just to understand what is going on. So within the country, Maia Sandu in fact lost this battle to her opponent. So you may, some of you may wonder, what was the reason to have a referendum in the Republic of Moldova a year ago? Was there summit, believe it is so. So here I have to say in a very clear way that that was not an official or unofficial condition of the European Union, right? And that was, the referendum was in fact the idea and official initiative of President Maya Sandu. And by the way, as far as I know, soon some of you will visit Brussels, right? Am I correct? So, and some of you may have the chance to visit the EU institutions, NATO institutions, and I wonder if some of you may ask, for example, people from DG who were technocrats, right, who were dealing with the real accession process, including with the Republic of Moldova. And I wonder if some of you may like to ask them, what was your real opinion when you have heard about the initiative to launch the referendum in 2024? I don't know what the result will be, what the answer will be, but my sources told me that in fact, neither in the EU Commission nor in DG people were happy with this initiative, because for them it seemed to be not the right time. Again, it was not a condition, right? Because usually, because many of you are coming from different countries, including EU countries, including those countries who joined the European Union in 2004, right? I hope there are many people who can confirm what has happened with the referendum and when the referendum on EU accession took place in those 10 countries who joined the EU in 2004. In fact, as far as we are all aware, neither Romania nor Bulgaria had no referendum, so they decided it through parliament. But other 8 countries who joined in 2004, they really did had a referendum on the EU accession, but only a year before their actual accession, right? So there was quite a debate in the Republic of Moldova. What are the reasons for President Maya Sandu, her political party, to launch the referendum, right? Maybe it's much better to wait until much more money from the EU accession funds to come to Moldova, and people would really feel how EU helps to Moldovan infrastructure and the social economic situation to be improved in our country. So there are some opinions according to which, in fact, this idea to launch a EU referendum to change Moldovan constitution in the same day with the first round of the presidential election was nothing else, just a political strategy for the president to win the presidential elections from the very first round, because the second round might be a tricky one, and you have seen, right? You have seen the results of the second round within the country, right? So it seems that it might be that for the political team of President Maya Sandu, their idea was just to help her to win in the first round of the presidential election and to avoid the second round, and to use the trust to the EU integration process to mobilize pro-European people in Moldova and to transfer the high approval ratings for EU membership to her own popularity, right? Unfortunately, the tactic, as you have already seen, backfired. Instead of boosting her support, the president's anti-rating translated into growing dissatisfaction with the very European course she embodied. Also, the objective, it seemed the objective of initiating, launching this referendum was to demonstrate a decisive victory for Euro integration supporters in Moldova's domestic political arena, which unfortunately failed, right? Again, if we will return back to the results of the EU accession referendum for those 8 countries in 2003. So correct me if I'm wrong, but in Estonia, 66% of Estonian citizens voted for the EU accession in 2003. In Latvia, 67% voted yes. In the Czech Republic, 77%. In Poland, 77%. Hungary, 83%. Hungary, yes, 2003, by the way. Slovenia, again, Slovenia, 89%, yes. Lithuania, 91%. Slovakia, 93%. That's the leader, right? And again, here we are. Here are the Moldovan results. By the way, there is another country in Europe who did have a referendum on the EU, but it failed. Do you know the country? So it's Norway. It's Norway. In 1994, Norway held a referendum on EU integration, and 52% said no, and because it is a democracy, not the EU member state. Why I'm implying this example? Because our question is again about irreversibility or reversibility of the EU integration course in the Republic of Moldova. And because, in fact, there is a clear, at the moment, procedure of accessing the EU. It seems that in several years, when all the parliaments or through referendum, the current EU member states will ratify the accession treaty with the Republic of Moldova, Moldova will need to approve its European integration course again, most probably through a referendum. So that was the point, and that was an internal discussion in the Republic of Moldova when some people were questioning this initiative. Is it the right time? And that's why I wonder what the people from DG here and from the EU Commission, they will be frank enough with you to recognize that in fact many of them, they were also opposing this initiative because it was more or less for many clear about the possible failure. So about the causes, what has happened in fact a year ago, because there are no official answers, clear answers on that. I mean, okay, yeah, there is one answer. This answer, of course, is about the electoral interference of Russia in elections in Moldova a year ago, but also during the recent parliamentary elections. And you may see the quote of President Maia Sandu. And by the way, I have forgotten to mention that this statement has been made at 3 a.m. So the elections took place on 20th October. And at 3 a.m., the votes no for the changing the constitution prevailed. And that was the moment when Maia Sandu had a small press conference, and that was the statement, right? Because that was a crucial moment. There was a real possibility that even, or despite the votes of the Moldovan diaspora, the no would prevail. That was the right moment. Early in the morning, Maya Sandu claimed that Moldova has faced an unprecedented assault on Moldova's freedom and democracy, that tens of millions of euros were used by Russia through lies, propaganda, and also buying the voters. And she also mentioned that she, together with the law enforcement institutions, have all the evidence that the Russian criminal groups aim to buy around 300,000 of votes, a fraud of unprecedented scale. Imagine. Yes, so again, I mentioned you, there are around 3.5 million of voters, of citizens of Moldova. The voters are 1.5 million of voters, so 300,000, in fact, this is really a huge amount, right? A huge percentage. Several days afterwards, the Moldovan police, they mentioned during a press conference that around $39 billion were funneled through a Russian bank to thousands of Moldovan citizens in September and October to bribe the voters. And police also, by the way, that was interesting for me, they mentioned that the voter bribery scheme began as early as April 2024. Imagine, this is a huge, unprecedented amount of money, right? And in that very moment, I have to be frank, because you, of course, obviously, it's unbelievable. And if it's like that, it's crucial somebody to bear the responsibility. Because if the police is right and the voter bribery scheme began as early as April, and we are in September, why so? Why haven't you told us before, right? So that was my first impression and my first reaction, and during the Q&A I would love maybe a colleague from the Republic of Moldova to share her impressions, right? So does it mean that from April to September 28th, the election day, Moldovan law enforcement failed to prevent, yes, this funneling of $39 billion, because that's how I understand the whole situation, right? Why did these law enforcement agencies only disclose this information after the election results were announced, rather than before, just to have prophylactic measures and people to be aware that it's very important for all pro-European citizens to come to the votes, right? Because that's very important. Just go around your neighbors and try to convince them, even if you took some money, because many people in the villages are poor, take the money, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to vote, right? In that way, they asked you to. Another my impression, immediately I heard this kind of statement, why has no senior official from the relevant law enforcement agencies resigned over such a massive oversight? Because I think that in every EU country, whenever something is happening like that, $40 billion coming from Russia or from another country, immediately somebody should bear the responsibility, which until now hasn't happened. So, I was analyzing, and I would love to share with you my thoughts, already lessons learned from the referendum experience. First of all, from the perspective of countering the Russian interference. If we will compare the attitude and the approach of the law enforcement agencies in Moldova with the recent parliamentary elections. So, and they really did, and this we have to recognize, they really did. They really had the police and the intelligence service, they really did their best to have them to trace and arrest, to crack down on disinformation and propaganda, collaborating, for example, with different social media and new partners to remove fake accounts and manipulated content. There was strict monitoring on cryptocurrency transfers and transactions via sanctioned Russian banks. Also, the anti-corruption board is tracked illicit funding schemes targeting votes, and it's first of all about the impunity, right? So, and here they also try to do their best. Of course, I think that I would expect more, but at least we have some results in this regards. That there have been some people which have had clear relations to Russia and received Russian money and collaborated with Russian agencies. They have been sentenced. One of the most vocal example is Bashkanov Evgenia Butsu. She has been sentenced to 7 years in jail on charges related to channeling money to finance the pro-Russian party. The leader of the party is a fugitive oligarch. Now he's based in Moscow. And several Moldovan members of parliament there were also sentenced for illegal party financing. By the way, they have fled, it seems that they have fled to Transnistria, where Moldovan authorities allege they remain under Russian protection. And I was wondering, are there any lessons learned from the referendum experience during the last parliamentary elections from the perspective of the content of the electoral campaign, right? So, and here I would love to bring you the example of the electoral leaflet, which was elaborated by the current ruling party, pro-European party of Action and Solidarity. This is in Romanian, so this is the translation of these leaflets. So it's about the danger for Moldova and family if we lose Moldova's European direction. So, and this pro-European party decided just to say to Moldovan citizens, look, if not us, yes please?
This was prior to the referendum, right?
Sorry?
This campaign was prior to the referendum.
This leaflet is so this leaflet. Thank you for a question. This leaflet was used 2 months ago before the parliamentary electoral campaign. So what I mean, lessons learned from the referendum experience, I meant maybe yes, my logic wasn't clear enough. Thank you for this question. So for me, for myself, the logic was, so the country is divided, right? So, and we have to analyze what has happened, why the country is divided, and maybe we have a year ahead to strengthen the social cohesion and to consolidate Moldovan people around the idea of the European integration. But I will share a little bit later my idea how approach of the most efficient way in this regard. So, so I was considering, what did the law enforcement agencies do to counter the Russian interference, right? So, and they did really do their best. They had their lessons learned, right? But the question also was towards the government about their steps to consolidate the Moldovan society rather than divide it even more, right? Together with other pro-European forces in the country. So that's why I decided to bring up this, this leaflet and to show you that yeah, the government party, they had a lot of options how to attract people. I don't know if any one of you will decide, or maybe you already dream about becoming a politician. right? Who knows? Who knows? I may imagine that many of you now may be quite naive and romantic. What does a politician mean? Right? Yeah, let's go to a Q&A session. Let's have an honest conversation, and also, or privately, I can also share my experience of being a member of parliament for 10 years. But it's there are, for any politician, there are always two main options, right? The long-term perspective and the short-term perspective. Here and now, we need the maturity. So, unfortunately, it's not about this concrete case and this concrete party, but unfortunately, in many countries, maybe even the countries you represent, you are coming from, politicians usually, I would not like to generalize, but usually, they are choosing the easiest way, here and now. Even if the price is the division of society even more, right? But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you see the discontent as an appropriate for the circumstances, because again, the result matters. And as I mentioned you before, they received a majority again, even if, regardless of the fact that many experts, the colleague from Moldova may also share her opinion, but many experts, the majority, they had a lot of doubts that this party will gain majority again. But they did. But they did. So let's see what was their option and how did they do that. Yes, of course, they did their best to counter the Russian propaganda and Russian interference, but it's also in combination with this approach to let Moldovan citizens know that it's only, at least this is an impression, right, from this kind of messages, it's only us who are able, yes, to maintain the most efficient and good relations with the European Union. If it's not us, Moldova's accession to the EU will be stopped. If not us, criminal groups will govern the Republic of Moldova. If not us, free movement, which we, as I mentioned before, received in 2014, free movement to European countries will be stopped. Borders to the free world will be closed. There is a risk that relatives will not be able to come home, and we will not be able to travel freely in Europe. Imagine what, I mean, every family in Moldova, they have at least one family member who is working or living in the European Union. Imagine how they perceive this message. So, again, another message. If not us, the EU will stop European funds. Corruption will flourish. All construction projects in the country will be stopped. Moldovans abroad will no longer have the rights to vote. Say no to Putin's candidates. Do not let pro-Russian parties control Moldova. So again, if in the future one of you will decide to become a decision maker, a politician, or maybe working in PR agency, you may remind our conversation of today, because you will need also to choose. The option here and now, the shortest option to receive the majority of votes, or the long-term perspective, which is much more difficult, right? So for myself, because of course you are not aware of the Moldovan context, but what I would also love to underline, so say no to Putin's candidates, and they put, you see, this chain, right, and several faces, right? So in a way or other, here you may see people who are really have been charged or are very well known for their relationship with Russia. For example, yes, the first is a well-known oligarch who captured the state, Vladimir Plahotniuk, is now staying in jail in Moldova. The second one is short, I was explaining about him. He's living now in Moscow. But there are some people here who are trying to say and include
in their political statements and electoral campaign and the status of their political parties that we condemn the Russian aggression against Ukraine, and second, that we support the EU integration of the Republic of Moldova. So some of them are included in this leaflet. I think it's also important to know, right? Because when I say about the long-term perspective, the long-term perspective from my point of view means that you don't try to monopolize the EU integration idea, right? So you try to create a team with other political parties and leaders. You may dislike them personally. These people may have had a strange past, let's put it this way. But because you have a long-term perspective to achieve the results of the next referendum, not as Slovakia with 93%, I don't know, I would love to see these results in Moldova, but at least Estonian result is 66%. You would need to have an alliance with other European parties instead of, yes, putting them in the whole list of their Putin's candidates. If again they are, prove that. Yes, sure, because you have the law enforcement. Show the people, right? Punish them. And just to be on the same page, and just to show you the example, this is Igor Dodon. He's the former president of the country. He's the leader of the Socialist Party. He has a lot of connections in the Russian Federation. So that's a screenshot from his Facebook page. So before the election, it was one of also his message. It is Maya Sandu and her political party who are creating the risk of war, not us. In order for you to understand that the main opponents, right, let's put it this way, pro-Europeans and pro-Russians, they were creating the atmosphere of fear. If you will elect this political party, war will be here. No, if you will elect them, they will bring the war here. So unfortunately, my impression was that was the main content of the last recent parliamentary elections. While, what do you think are, according to the sociological polls, the main problems people are facing with in the Republic of Moldova? By the way, I will show you some data from the sociological polls, but you know very well that we should be very careful with the sociological polls, right? Because I know, in my country, I know what is a reliable institution, right? They really show the results. Yes, so I just decided to show you the results of the survey, which has been done by the Institute for Public Policies for the last 20 years. So they are quite a credible institution, right? And we may see the trends. So, what are the evolution of priorities for the Moldovan citizens? So what are the main 5 problems? The main 5 problems, they are, as you may see, development of the economy, raising the standard of living, fighting corruption, ensuring peace and understanding, strengthening law and order, right, in a way or other. These are the main topics for the last survey. Unfortunately, so my impression was it was mostly, the most parts, they so-called pro-Europeans and pro-Russians, so they were concentrating mostly on this fear of war, right? War and peace. And yes, please choose us and we will bring the peace. But less on economy, on social, economic development, corruption, etc. And now, an interesting story and some kind of local Moldovan paradoxes which unfortunately international media somehow also avoids to bring up to the table, or maybe they just don't dig so deep, right? It's about the evolution of the level of support towards the integration idea in the Republic of Moldova. Again, it's very important, the source, Parameter of Public Opinion. This is Institute for Public Policies, very credible and relevant institution, and you may see the data starting with 2004 and until recently. Yeah, so you will see, and in fact I have forgotten to introduce, so the respondents were answering to one main simple question. If the referendum on the EU accession will take place next Sunday, how would you vote? So the blue, vote for, right? So in fact, that is why many people in Moldova, but also in the EU institutions, they had their concerns about the initiative of President Maia Sandu to launch the referendum a year ago. Because it's here, it's obvious, because you have the data, because you have the survey. I mean, of course you also talk to people, but you also see the trends, right? And for example, the last survey, they did before the referendum, August 2023. So you see, it's around 50, 52, 53%. So it was clear that there is no clear majority in this regard. And by the way, I think that it's also important because there also might arise a question if we once compare Moldova to Georgia, because in Georgian constitution there is the accession to EU and NATO. So what about NATO? Why? By the way, in this Moldova constitution hasn't been updated with NATO as well. I think that's that's a simple question, because here are the data. Again, the same source, and you may see that yes, the blue is vote for. So the last data are around 23 to 25%, and I've checked also other relevant sources that they tell the same. So it's a constant support for NATO accession is 20 to 25% over the last 2 decades. And you may see there was a slight increasing in after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but it was up to 28%. So that is why some of you may ask why, for example, Moldova hasn't joined the initiative of Finland and Sweden, because in Finland and Sweden, who used to be, as you may know, the neutral state before the Russian invasion, people supported neutrality, but exactly the second day after this invasion, people supported the joining of their countries to NATO. This didn't happen in Moldova. So that is why Moldovan president and the ruling party decided to avoid to include NATO in the constitution, because in Moldovan constitution neutrality is enshrined as a constitutional provision. And by the way, I have to be very clear, technically it's approximately impossible to get rid of neutrality stipulation. If you will have questions why, I would be ready to answer. So, yeah, and what about Moldova security? This is another source. This is the source of IRI, International Republican Institute. I think that it could also be quite a relevant and reliable source in May this year. And you may see that up to 2 responses accepted that neutrality seems to be the first option, right? As the first, and the second option is 63%. And by the way, protection by the EU, 29%, was separated as another question, right? So, strengthening Moldova's army, 22%, and protection by NATO, 19%. Yeah, 50% you may see protection by Russia, 12% by Romania, 3% by Ukraine.
So, yeah, and here we are, in order for you just to understand better this data and these trends and these graphics. From my personal point of view, the country's strong division and lack of social cohesion represent the main security risk for the Republic of Moldova at the moment, and the main risk to undermine the EU course and the irreversibility of this course. So support for EU membership among Moldovan citizens fluctuates around 50% at the moment. And by the way, I have to underline that all the data from all the surveys I showed you, they are only valid for the right bank of Mr. River, because it's not possible for Moldovan sociologists to go to Transnistrian region and to have some sociological data. But it's very important, and I really have to mention this is very important, that during the EU referendum, Transnistrian region, so people from Transnistrian region, 31% of Moldovan citizens living in this Transnistrian region, they supported the EU referendum. Do you imagine? And by the way, none of the political parties have the official access to Transnistrian region to campaign. None of them. And still 31% out of those who were small number who participated, they supported the EU referendum. Gagauzien region, which is considered to be pro-Russian, but it's like we have to go deeper in that about what Gagauzien means. If you will have some questions during the Q&A, only 5%. So you see a very paradoxical issue. So political parties of Moldova, they have the right to go to Gagauzien and to promote the EU integration, but as a result, 5% only voted for the EU referendum. But in Transnistria, nobody has this possibility to promote EU integration, but still people voted 31%. So what is a paradox, a Moldovan paradox? You know, I think it won't be a secret for you that because of some reasons, many people and experts and international media, while presenting the picture from the Republic of Moldova, they put it in a very simple way. When it is about the left-wing political party, it's a pro-Russian party. And when it's about the right-wing political party, it's a pro-European. I don't know if you've heard this kind of trend in explaining on what is going on. So the paradox of the Republic of Moldova is that the only period of time since 2003 when we have had the constant support of the more than 60% of Moldovan citizens about the EU course was between 2005 and 2009, when the Party of Communists ruled the country. The lowest level of EU support during their governments was 64, and the highest was 76. So if you may remember, that's the data, right? So the blue, you see, more than 60% from 2005 to 2009. And you see the trend. Nobody, including the current pro-European government, they didn't manage to achieve the same level of, again, constant credibility and support of EU integration. Yes, please.
Moving to the highest level and the lowest level, we can see that it's somehow attached to the ruling party, because I assume that the Communist Party was quite against the European integration. Am I correct?
No.
Okay. Then my thesis falls.
Yeah.
But no, then my thesis completely falls.
So that's a good question. So the question. So the Party of Communists, the leader of the Party of Communists has been elected twice as president of the country, and he was the first one to proclaim in the Moldovan official documents that EU integration is the main course for the country. So if you may remember the milestones on the first slide, so you may see that in 2005, right, so Moldova began implementing its first EU there, so it was during the government of the Communist Party, also the new border assistance and whatsoever. Also, I have to underline that in 2005, all the parties in the parliament signed an agreement in the parliament. We all support, it's not about the Party of Communists, we all support the EU course. And because I really would love to have an inspiring and fruitful conversation with you, so I will just mention that the lowest level of support, again a paradox, for the EU took place in the period of time of 2012 to 2019. It was the ruling of the so-called Alliance for the EU Integration. What a paradox, right? During the communism, the highest level of support. During the Alliance for EU Integration, they self-proclaimed themselves, right? That was the lowest support. What I also want to bring to the table is very important to avoid for the European Union the policy of double standards. Because it also may damage the popularity. But if you will have a question, I will explain what does it mean. So the point is, and I'm reaching to the end, so I took a statement of Maya Sandu several years ago that Moldovan accession to the EU is not only a political choice, it's the only way to protect our freedom, peace, and democracy. And from my point of view, I mean, there are, of course, several options how to reach the consensus on the EU integration. So the proposals could be different. One of them could be to launch broad and inclusive discussions on EU accession negotiations, parties, civil society, NGOs, and to have a long-term national priority. To avoid monopolizing the idea of EU integration for short-term electoral gains, and to involve left and center-left pro-European political forces, because somebody needs to go to these regions who voted against the referendum, right, including to the Georgian, including the Transnistria region, and to campaign for the EU. So the main components, again, if we take into consideration the data, though, because neutrality gains the majority of support, regardless of the geopolitical circumstances. So permanent neutrality could be one of the important points of the national consensus. But to consider neutrality as a part of the solution rather than part of the problem. But we definitely, Moldovan society needs a debate. What does neutrality mean? Because I have to recognize different political parties. They have different meaning. What does neutrality mean? Right? Reintegration of the country with its Transnistrian region. Because how I think that the main question is how can anyone be sure that by 2030 there will be a consensus in the EU to follow the Cyprus model? Because some EU representative says, okay, you don't need to resolve the Transnistrian conflict because we will follow the Cyprus model. Will we have a consensus in the EU by 2030 in this regard? I don't know. I'm not sure. So it's better to resolve it now. Because it could happen that the Moldovan government will resolve 99% of all the conditions, but not the Transnistrian conflict, and then Hungary, Slovakia, or whatever will say, we will veto. Yeah, great, well done, do all it. Why don't they these two resolve to integrate the country? So yeah, an accession to the European Union, together with the Transnistrian region as a neutral state, bringing its legislation to the line with the EU common security and defense policy and representing an irreversible integration. That may sound like quite an optimistic scenario, and I'm looking forward. What do you think about this scenario or all the other circumstances happening in Moldova? Please, the floor is yours.
We will use this one for questions and this one for answers, maybe. No, I'm going.
That's cool.
Please.
We need a live.
Okay. Are you ready? Yes. Sylvia.
Hello, I'm Selena from Argentina. In line with my colleague that asked you about the role or the life Communist Party, at least in my country, Communist Party do not position with the Middle East conflict. This question I have just also made it to the Estonian professor last week. Thank you.
The attitude towards which conflict?
Middle East.
Middle East.
Middle East.
Okay.
So should we collect...
Yes, I think that would be a great idea to collect several questions because we have only 15 minutes, I think.
Okay, so there are some... Maybe... No, this is everything. Would you like to comment?
Johan from Germany. To me, it seems that even though support seems to be there, at least sometimes more, sometimes less for your session, more like the logistical issue seems to be the issue of Transnistria. So I think without a unified Moldova with Transnistria or solution to Transnistria Moldova, I don't think the UX session can be possible. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that and how you think that could play out in the future, or a possible solution to UX session without Transnistria or Transnistria Moldova realignment before UX session.
I want to also ask about some of the Communist Party, because I think this part of the elections, the Communist Party was part of the coalition, opposition coalition, which was kind of pro-Russian. Is that right?
During the last elections?
Yeah. And so maybe they changed their pro-European stance. That's my first question. The second one is that, if I'm not wrong, also in that election there are 3 parties that were banned from the election that were kind of pro-Russian. We also saw the same thing happening with the presidential election in Romania. So do you think that this stance towards the pro-Russian parties are promoting, let's say, Rusophilia in Moldova, or they are in favor of the European prospect of the country?
You mean those who has been banned, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, if the decision to ban those countries promote Rusophilia, because they think that they are fighting against it.
Greece, I also from Greece. Very interesting lecture. Didn't know stuff about Moldova, now I do. Thank you for that. I want to ask you 2 questions, highly related to the ones my colleagues asked before. One of them is with regards to how do you situate the debate with regards to the EU when it comes to the significance as a grievance inside the political system of Moldova nowadays. Do you think it has any importance compared to left or right, for example, in other traditional grievances? And question number 2 I want to ask about Moldova again is...
But what was the...
okay, because now we see that the issue of the European Union has become rhetorically, at least, or in the discourse of various political parties in Moldova, quite silent. They mention it, they put their eggs into that basket. So I wonder, has it been increasing the importance compared to other more traditional grievances, like, for example, the left or right one? Like my colleague said, you see communist parties collaborating with right-wing conservative parties. What unites them is anti-European one. That's my question. So, question number 2 is with regards to rhetoric again and the discourse. From what I understood, there is a rise in conflict as a means of getting political wins in Moldova at the moment. There is mass division, and this zero-sum approach towards political objectives tends to create illiberalism in different other countries. I wonder what's the trajectory of Moldova compared to that. Policies like imprisoning political actors or bargaining parties, making suspicion as well. So I want your approach. What do you see in the Moldovan future?
Maybe
be suspicious for its own citizens?
No, for the noble aims of the Moldovan government, I wonder these acts are not usually connected to good democratic practices and standards.
Good afternoon, thank you for your intervention. I had a question about the first part of the presentation, particularly about the diaspora and the diaspora of the Moldovan people around the world, especially around Europe. And because I think that you were pretty critic in that part about how the diaspora was influenced the actual result of the referendum, and then I can say even actually of the presidential election last year. And my question was like, from my perception, this election was even a bit maybe influenced from your past experience in political dialogue of the Congress political dialogue. And why can you say that the diaspora people of the poorest country in Europe, like, could not have like the same, why were you critical about that part? I mean, you are going to consider like those people as Moldovan, like others, maybe they want to join Europe because they live in a European Union now.
Okay. Further comments, questions? Yes, there is one. Okay. No, all these goes to the other.
So, and I will have 5 minutes. Okay.
Yes. Thank you for your lecture. My name is Irreversible from Poland. And do you think that we could identify one biggest factor that stands in the way of the integration of Moldova into the EU? Or maybe it's not that easy to identify that one factor, and it's rather a mix of all of these factors. And maybe another thing is that I would say the safety of and security of Moldova is directly tied to the energy and the energetical security, and with the cutting ties with dependency on Russia on energy, is that a factor that enables or makes easier the process of integration? How do you see the diversification of the sources of energy of Moldova as a factor in the integration? Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much. So it seems that I have only 5 minutes.
No, but you have some minutes more.
I'm not sure if the majority will agree.
The time slot is from 2 to 4. So.
Okay. Okay. Now I see the reaction. Let's check about the yes, whether the majority will agree with that. So thank you again. I think if we would have more time, yeah, we would have more time. The number of questions would be even more. I think that it's very interesting that quite a lot of questions regard the party of communists, right? The Communist Party and their role, the name, how is it possible? Yes, some of you reported in a very correct way that in the recent parliamentary elections, the Party of Communists was in the so-called patriotic bloc, whose ideology might mostly seem as a conservative ideology rather than a communist or socialist or left wing. And indeed, it seems that the patriotic bloc has had more pro-Russian stance in this regard. So what I mentioned during this presentation, I showed you the service according to which, in the past, the Party of Communists, who was the governing party, had a clear pro-European stance and was the first one to introduce the European integration in the official documents of the Republic of Moldova, who, in a way or other, was that left-wing political party who used its authority among its constituency to go there, including to Gagauzia and other regions where mostly pro-Russians live, or people with different ethnic backgrounds live, and used to convince them, right, so that the European accession, the EU accession, is the only way of the internal modernization of the Republic of Moldova, which we do that now. So we don't have this kind of left political parties who would campaign about the same idea in these regions. Yes, and you are totally right. For example, that what I would love to mention, by the way, about the current position of the Party of Communists regarding the neutrality. And this is a good opportunity to mention this because, as you may remember, I told you, it's very important to have an open debate in the Republic of Moldova, political parties, civil society, whatever, to understand what really neutrality means. Because there is only two, there is one small mentioning in the Constitution, that we have permanent neutrality, and that's all. And of course, we don't permit to foreign military troops stationed in the Republic of Moldova. That's the only mentioning article about neutrality. So the other ideas and approaches, they are only speculations, let's put it this way. So, for example, the current Party of Communists and Party of Socialists and other members of the so-called patriotic blocs who were participating as a bloc during the recent parliamentary elections, they have quite a strange approach about what neutrality means from their perspective. So, wherever they are asked about what is your position about the Russian aggression against Ukraine, they don't comment that. They don't say a word about that. So they don't clearly say that we condemn the Russian aggression against Ukraine. And their reason why they don't mention that, according to them, including Party of Communist representatives and Party of Socialists, is that, look, we have a permanent neutrality in Constitution, and we consider that neutrality means that we are not allowed to comment about other conflicts. It's their problem. We wish them, peace, but we don't want to comment that, right? So from my point of view, it doesn't make any sense. This approach doesn't mean a neutrality from my personal perspective, right? Because from my perspective, their position is a double standards, nothing else. Because whenever the same representatives, current representatives of Party of Communists and Party of Socialists, they are asked about the military interventions of NATO or US, they are always ready to condemn them, right? They do that, and they don't mention, okay, it's neutrality, and neutrality means we have to be silent. So they only use neutrality as a reason why not to condemn the Russian aggression against Ukraine, which doesn't make sense from my perspective. This is, again, a double standard. So neutrality doesn't mean that one shouldn't condemn any aggression, any war, regardless of the name and the color of the aggressor, whether it's NATO, whether it's US, whether it's Russian Federation or any other aggressor in the world, right? To avoid the double standards. Yeah, here we also, there was a question about whether perception. So it's your right to have this perception. I can only share that I'm quitted politics and parliamentary and political party activities in 2019 because of different reasons. Let's talk about this over the coffee. That I'm trying to do my best to be an objective person. First, again, I was invited to become an executive director, was voted as an executive director in a well-known non-governmental organization in Moldova. Currently, I'm a researcher. So, and I really think that my previous professional career as a politician, as a member of parliament, I also was working in the presidential administration in the Republic of Moldova, but also as a civil society activist. I also was a moderator of a TV show in Moldova, but also currently as a researcher. I think that having all experiences with all these different hats allow me to dig deeper and to bring sometimes another approach on some issues and some other approaches on how to make the EU integration really an irreversible one. The question about Transnistrian region, so I really, as I thank you for also for this question, I really think that it's too dangerous to leave it like that, right? So yeah, it's the easiest way. Again, for politicians, it might be okay. Yeah, let's decide on other 30 or so clusters. Let's think about the fight against corruption. Let's think about the increasing the social economic standards, whatever. But afterwards, we may follow the Cyprus example, because, for example, Josep Borrell, a year ago, he clearly mentioned that it is possible for Moldova to become the EU member state without resolving the Transnistrian conflict beforehand. So, from my personal point of view, this is quite a dangerous approach. So again, because I'm not sure that there will be a clear consensus in the EU. And any country, again, like Hungary, Slovakia, and whatever, so they may recall it, no, first you resolve this consistent conflict, and afterwards we will think about your accession. But it's not so easy, of course, but it means also the collaboration and agreement with the whole society in this regard. And by the way, I have to recall a very interesting example, which already, I mean, many people from Moldova, they know about this example, which has happened in 2003 when Russian Federation was clearly interested in federalization of the Republic of Moldova. There was an attempt to sign so-called Memorandum of Supac. You may check in Wikipedia what does it mean. And it seems that at that moment Russian Federation really considered the Party of Communists and its leader Vladimir Voronin at that point like puppets of Russia. They tried to influence content of an agreement according to which Russia would be allowed to station their military troops for another 20 years in Transnistrian region in a legal way, because currently the only who is violating the neutrality status of the Republic of Moldova is our Russian troops, nobody else, because the only agreement to legally station in the Transnistrian region is for the peacekeeping forces, right, including Russian forces. But there is no legal reason, no agreement to Russian troops to station in our Transnistrian region, part of the Republic of Moldova. And by the way, every president, Vladimir Voronin, that socialist Igor Dodon, whatever, all Moldovan presidents, they always underline that Russia should follow its statement from Istanbul Agreement in 1999 and to withdraw its troops because, again, Russia violates the Moldovan constitution. According to which Moldova is a neutrality. And neutrality for sure means that no military troops should be stationed there. So what has happened in 2003, that regardless of the attempt of Russia to receive the signature of the Communist Party and its president Vladimir Voronin, he was a person who, because Vladimir Putin was already in his way in the plane to Chisinau to sign this agreement, Vladimir Voronin, he called to Putin and he told that no, I decline this proposal because it's not according to Moldovan interests. It's not according to Moldovan constitution. Moldova is a neutral state, and it should be neutral regardless of the interests of any other capitals, including Moscow and including Russian Federation. That's what I call a statement. That's what I call that Moldova and every other country needs this kind of people to be in the leadership, to follow the national interests of the country and to follow the articles of the constitution. About the question, interesting question about diaspora. Thank you very much for this question. In order just to be very clear, so I think that I have never mentioned any negative words about diaspora. I couldn't do that, and I won't do that. First of all, because of my personal interest, because here I am. I am a part of Moldovan diaspora. Since September last year, I moved to Bonn. I live in Germany. With Moldovan passport, by the way, because it's important, because so many Moldovan citizens they use Bulgarian or Romanian passports. So I live in Germany with my Moldovan passport, so I know the real face of German democracy. Sorry for the colleague from Germany, you know what I'm talking about. So, yes, I really believe that people who are working and living abroad, it's their responsibility as the citizens of the Republic of Moldova to be able to go and to vote. Why I have brought this kind of data is just to show to myself, to yourself, to Moldovan governments, to Moldovan civil society, right, that look, here is the problem. We have a problem within the Republic of Moldova. There is no social cohesion. The country inside is divided. So, and let us not do every time to pray, oh, let diaspora help us. Diaspora will do it first. Diaspora will come and vote, of course, but it doesn't mean the politicians and the civil society should not work and go to the most skeptical region of the Republic of Moldova and to see what is the atmosphere. Why these people consider it like that, and why some myths are spread over the EU. For example, one of the myths, of course, spread by Russian Federation and some pro-Russian forces, by the way, for example, is that the accession to the EU concomitantly means the accession to NATO, which is not true. We know that, right? But imagine if nobody would come to the Gagauzhian village and won't reply to this question. So my point is that, unfortunately, many pro-European political parties, they don't have their party structures in Gagauzia, for example. But my question is, who should go there and promote the European integration? Do you imagine that sometimes the ambassadors of US and the ambassador of the delegation of the EU, they are more frequent in Gagauzia than pro-European politicians? But it's not the responsibility of the EU to promote EU integration, it's the responsibility of Moldovan citizens, including the pro-European parties. That is why I'm trying to do my best to point out on the problems, right? Because again, my idea is to follow Estonian, Slovakian, Hungarian, and other examples from 2003 to receive at least 65% of votes for the EU
accession, and not only a one-time vote, but a constant support. Because if you may have followed yesterday's declaration of the EU Commission, please follow the declaration of Ursula von der Leyen, Kaja Kallas, Marta Kos. So the idea, which was mentioned by Kaja Kallas or Marta Kos, was to have a gradual accession. That's another story to be discussed, right? So with the limited rights for the new member states. And she clearly mentioned that I don't want to be a EU commissioner who will bring to the EU the new Trojan horses, right? Like, of course, like several current EU member states, right? So, and imagine in 3 or 4 years, we don't know what will be the components of the EU Parliament, right? We don't know what will happen in the elections in 2 years in France. We don't know what will happen in the elections in Germany in 4 years. So we need to do our homework. And our homework is to go more often to Moldovan villages, Moldovan cities, right? Not only to Brussels, of course, to Brussels as well, but to convince the people that as I mentioned the statement of Maya Sandu, so it's European Union, it's the real and the only umbrella for democracy and freedom, peace and security. The question about, by the way, I have forgotten about the Middle East and the position of the left wing political parties in Moldova. I think that they are silent. I haven't heard, by the way, I haven't heard any position of any political party in Moldova. Maybe I'm wrong about the Middle East conflict. Also, there, about many political parties and the example of Romania. So, what I want to say, it's like, I think it's quite easy enough to ban a political party, right? It's just a decision of the Constitutional Court or the law enforcement agency. But the long-term perspective is just to talk again. This is not so easy to talk to people and to understand what is in their mind, why they're voting for these for the right-wing political parties, or these parties who are paying, bribing them the Russian money. Why is it so? In Moldovan case, sometimes, and in many cases, the question is, the Moldova, you have heard about this, that Moldova is considered to be, unfortunately, one of the poorest countries in Europe. So imagine people in the villages, they live very poor. So it's very easy to come and to bribe them. So the question is, the answer is, so we have to raise the social economic standards, right? People not to be in the situation to accept 10 or 20 euro. That's the price. But imagine for many of these people, I have to be very frank, it's a lot of money. That's the situation. So we have to deal with the roots of the problem. Whatever, because we can, we can think about banning the political parties, but unfortunately, it's not a long-term perspective. Because people who have the money, who are staying, whether it's Russia or any other countries, they have the money, and they will create another clones, right? And this won't, unfortunately, my personal point of view, that we have to implement the systemic and comprehensive approach in this regard.
30 seconds left.
So, and yes, about, of course, we have to diversify our energy supplies, and about the factor. So again, I may sound like a real romantic person, right? But even if, regardless of the fact that I used to be a politician, but my experience shows, as a politician, as a researcher, as a civil society expert, go to the people, right? So strengthen the social cohesion, find the people's mood, and convince them. Don't hide in your offices. Be there with the people, because whenever you are not there, whenever you are more literate in Brussels or any other capitals, this will be a gift for Russian influence or any other influence, because they will use money and any other propaganda tools in order to convince people. So I think that's the key secret of the success, and I really believe that Moldovan EU integration would be really an irreversible course when we will have a consolidation of all political and civil society efforts. So yeah, let's see and let's meet maybe in a year or so, and just to discuss the prospects and also the prospects of your career. Who knows? Maybe in several years you will be the decision makers in the European Parliament in your countries, and then you will be able to go to promote Moldovan accession to the EU.
Okay, Mr. Supac.